very interesting. There was a march in East London on Saturday, all men, all dressed in black, most with face masks, and they were protesting about an anti-Islamic extremist demo that in fact was banned.
There's a riot happening in Britain, and it's not just on the streets. It's in policy, in leadership, in the quiet collapse of institutions that were once taken for granted. And for many, it feels like the country isn't just in decline, it's being managed into it. When mobs start smashing through police cordons, when violent criminals are walking free under schemes like SDS-40, and when law enforcement is so overwhelmed they are forced to retreat from the very communities they are supposed to protect, something is fundamentally broken. With tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. This isn't the result of chance. It's the consequence of decisions, deliberate ones. Take SDS-40. Under Prime Minister Starmer's government, thousands of prisoners are being released after serving just 40% of their sentences. Over 40,000 offenders, many of them violent, some with ties to extremism, are now back on the streets. And the public's left to deal with it. No warning, no plan. Just more risk, more fear, and more confusion. This is being sold as progressive justice. But what it really is dangerous. And the results are showing up everywhere. Machete attacks, street violence, looting, police officers withdrawing from scenes because they are outnumbered or outpaced. And the people paying the price? Ordinary citizens who are just trying to live their lives in peace. Meanwhile, the government's too busy to notice. Or worse, they have noticed and decided it's acceptable collateral damage in service of bigger political goals. Because if you widen the lens, this isn't just about crime, it's about control. Or more accurately, the loss of it. Britain's borders are in chaos. Thousands of illegal migrants are arriving by boat every single day. Many of them without ID. Many of them released directly into communities. Some with serious criminal backgrounds. And the system? It's not stopping them. It's facilitating them. Loopholes are everywhere. Claims of persecution. Endless appeals. Human right protections that seem to work exclusively in favor of the offender. It's created a legal fortress around illegal entry, where even known criminals can stay indefinitely by gaming the system. The result is overcrowded detention centers, overrun local services, and a growing sense that the government has completely lost its grip. And let's be honest, this isn't just incompetence. It's philosophy. It's a political approach that favors globalist ideals and international compliance over national security. Prime Minister Starmer has made it clear political correctness and international image come first. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. That's why instead of addressing rising violence or tightening border controls, the government leans into climate declarations, abstract social justice initiatives, and deflection tactics that do nothing for the people actually living through the consequences. It's created a climate of distrust. You can feel it on the ground. Protests aren't isolated. They are the sound of a population that feels ignored, betrayed, and pushed to the edge. Barricades, street clashes, mass unrest. It's not just outrage, it's desperation. And yet the message from government remains the same. Stay calm, be patient, trust the process. But what process? The one that lets thousands of illegal entrants settle in communities without screening? The one that frees violent offenders after just a few years? The one that punishes taxpayers while funding endless migrant support services? The social contract, the understanding between citizen and state, is fractured. The rules no longer feel consistent. If you break the law as a citizen, you're penalized. If you break the law as a migrant or an extremist, you're processed with care and often released with support. And the judiciary? It's just as compromised. Judges lean toward leniency, citing reform over punishment. Police are hesitant to act in high-risk areas, knowing the political blowback that might come with any aggressive enforcement. Urban areas are seeing full-scale withdrawals, not because officers don't want to serve, but because they aren't backed by a government that prioritizes safety over optics. Law and order is no longer a guarantee. It's a gamble. And when safety is politicized, everything unravels. Trust disappears. People stop reporting crimes. Vigilantism rises. Communities fracture. And that's exactly where Britain is heading. A society where institutions are hollowed out from the inside, and where the government's only consistent move is to protect its own narrative. The irony? The government talks constantly about unity and inclusion, but it's their policies driving the wedge deeper. By prioritizing illegal entrance, bending to international legal pressures, and allowing cultural dilution in the name of tolerance, they've severed the connection between leadership and the people they represent. People aren't just angry, they're alienated. They see traditional British values abandoned. They see their taxes funding migrant hotels, while services in their own communities shrink. They watch crime rise and are told it's under control. They hear the same sound bites over and over while their day-to-day lives become harder, more dangerous, and more uncertain. It's why words like sovereignty, you've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. Security and stability aren't just political buzzwords anymore. They're survival goals. Because if you can't rely on your leaders to protect borders, punish criminals, or preserve cultural identity, what do you have left? A managed decline. That's what? That's a phrase no one in government will say out loud, but everything points to it. A state of slow disintegration, handled with PR instead of policy. A country where economic decay is seen as inevitable, where skyrocketing taxes on inheritance and small businesses are called necessary, even as those same businesses close their door for good. You're seeing it across the economy. Rising insurance premiums. Storefronts boarded up. NHS wait lists growing longer and longer. Homelessness climbing. All while massive sums are redirected toward legal protections, housing, and services for migrants who should never have been allowed in under any functioning system. This is what happens when leadership values image over outcome, when national identity is seen as outdated, when safety is deemed too sensitive to talk about. It's not a short-term dip. It's the architecture of long-term collapse. And it's not just about hard power, the police, the military, the courts. It's also about soft power. The cultural glue that holds people together, the shared values, the identity, the pride, that, too, is being eroded. Multiculturalism, once sold as a strength, has turned into a scapegoat for division, not because diversity is inherently bad, but because the government failed to manage it. They didn't enforce integration. They didn't protect British customs. They didn't draw lines. And now, the idea of national cohesion is treated like a relic, something to be quietly phased out in favor of a new, undefined order. So you've got chaos on both fronts, physical and cultural. And while the cracks widen, those in power still act as if it's all business as usual. But it's not, and people know it. They feel it in their bones. Because deep down, they sense that this isn't just political mismanagement. It's something worse. It's abandonment. A quiet surrender to forces that have nothing to do with democracy, sovereignty, or public will. A deference to courts outside the UK, to ideologies that weaken national identity, to migration flows that serve no economic or social purpose. It's not reform. It's sabotage wrapped in red tape. So where does this end? Without bold reforms, without immediate, unapologetic action, Britain doesn't just risk instability. It risks irrelevance. A nation too fractured to fight back, too burdened by guilt and bureaucracy to protect itself. With tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. It's not alarmist to say this. It's already happening. And unless there's a complete reversal on crime, immigration, policing, and cultural policy, this trajectory only goes one way. The people know it. They feel the ground shifting. They see the cracks in the pavement. And they're not going to wait quietly while the entire structure caves in. If this breakdown has hit a nerve, say something. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What are you seeing in your town, your city, your neighborhood? Are the leaders in touch, or are they just talking to each other? Smash the like button if you think it's time for someone to speak up. Share this with someone who's been told they're overreacting when they say the country doesn't feel safe anymore. And hit subscribe if you want more no-nonsense breakdowns like this one, because silence got us here, and silence won't get us out. Britain is being hollowed out from the inside, and the people living through it know it better than anyone. What we're seeing now isn't the natural ebb and flow of a democratic society. It's a deliberate dismantling of national cohesion, brick by brick, under the guise of modernity and progress. And the public? They're expected to just take it. Quietly, obediently, as if they haven't noticed the fire's getting closer. What used to be basic expectations, safe streets, fair justice, controlled borders, are now seen as controversial talking points. This is how far the Overton window has shifted. Law and order, once a foundation of society, is now politicized. Identity is diluted. And safety? That's a luxury for the elite, not a guarantee for the taxpayer. So let's go back to the streets, because that's where the reality is unfolding. Riots, mass protests, police lines overwhelmed. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. These aren't rare eruptions. They're a pattern, a growing one. The mob that tore through Cordons following the release of alleged extremists wasn't acting out of nowhere. That was a spark in a field full of dry grass. The conditions had been set long before. The rage, the distrust, the sense of total abandonment. You don't get this kind of unrest from isolated policy errors. You get it when the social contract collapses completely. Because what's the contract now? You pay taxes, obey the law, support the system, and in return, you get what exactly? A government that prioritizes boat arrivals over border control? A justice system that gives second chances to extremists while threatening farmers with jail time over property disputes? I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. A police force that backs down in riots but aggressively finds people for minor infractions? That's not a contract. That's a scam. And the people know it. That's why the anger isn't going away. It's why it keeps bubbling over, because no one at the top is addressing it directly. Instead, they send out carefully worded statements, deflecting blame, reframing facts, and spinning chaos as progress. But numbers don't lie. 40,000 early releases under SDS 40. That's 40,000 offenders, some violent, some repeat offenders, some linked to extremist ideologies, back in communities. Released not because they served justice, but because the government decided it couldn't handle the consequences of keeping them locked up. And why? Because the prisons are full. Because the border is a revolving door. Because the system is overwhelmed and under-resourced. Not due to bad luck, but due to decades of political cowardice and mismanagement. You can't fill a cup that's already overflowing, and yet they keep pouring more into a system that's buckling at every joint. More migrants, more criminals, more court backlogs, more loopholes, more money funneled into surface-level solutions while the core remains untouched. And still, people are told to remain calm. Meanwhile, community tensions are rising. Public trust in police is plummeting. Respect for institutions, gone. You can't have national unity without fairness. And you can't have fairness when citizens are treated like an afterthought in their own country. This isn't theoretical. This isn't sensationalism. It's lived experience now. The evidence is in every street corner where police no longer patrol. In every town hall meeting where residents are told there's nothing we can do. In every viral video of yet another violent incident caught on camera. And in every statistic quietly buried in the back of a government report. And all the while, the people at the top pretend Britain is progressing. Progressing toward what? Toward a state where national sovereignty is outsourced to international courts? Where criminals are fast-tracked into housing and job placements, while working-class families are priced out of their own neighborhoods? Where children are raised under systems that no longer teach them what it means to be British? That's not progress. That's managed decline, a slow, controlled fall into cultural and institutional decay, sold as evolution. And the worst part? There's no accountability, no resignations, no admissions of failure, just a steady stream of spin, as if rebranding reality will fix it. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. Take the courts. Judges, influenced by political pressure and social media sentiment, are now less about law and more about optics. Offenders with clear threats to public safety walk free under technicalities. And the average citizen sees it all and loses more faith by the day, because it's no longer about punishment. It's about appearance. And appearances are deceiving. And it's not just justice, it's economy too. The economic decay is a side effect of the same illness. When you allow chaos to fester, business dries up, confidence drops. Why open a shop in an area where theft and vandalism go unpunished? Why invest when the rules can change based on political pressure, or when local authorities are too afraid to enforce them? So the small shops close, the local trades disappear, jobs vanish, and yet taxes keep rising. For what? To fund legal aid for people fighting deportation after committing crimes? To build more temporary housing while British citizens languish on social housing wait lists? And then you get told you're part of the problem if you question any of this. The messaging is clear. Be silent, be compliant, and let the system handle it. But what happens when the system no longer works? What happens when every institution, from law enforcement to border control, to the courts, to Parliament itself, begins to crack under the weight of its own contradictions? You get what we're seeing now: civil unrest, cultural confusion, economic breakdown, and an increasingly radicalized public, not because they want to be, but because they've run out of peaceful ways to be heard. And all this chaos is being filtered through one lens: control. Not control in the traditional sense of enforcing rules and securing borders, but control of perception, controlling the narrative, managing headlines, silencing critics, framing anyone who raises concern as divisive, dangerous, or outdated. But there's nothing outdated about wanting your country to function. There's nothing wrong with expecting safety, structure, and accountability. These aren't fringe demands. They are the bare minimum of what any government is supposed to deliver. And yet somehow, expecting those things now brands you as extreme. That's how far we've fallen. So where does it go from here? Without immediate reform, genuine, unapologetic reform, Britain doesn't just risk unrest. It risks irreversibility. Because trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to rebuild. And the longer the government waits to act, the harder it will be to win the public back. Because there's a breaking point, and we're getting closer to it. People aren't asking for miracles. With tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. They're asking for reality. For honest leadership, for borders that mean something, for criminals to be held accountable, for institutions to protect the people paying for them. Not ideology, not PR, not managed decline. The time for soft answers is over. The question now isn't whether Britain is in crisis. It is. The question is whether the people who cause it are capable of fixing it, or whether the public will need to take matters into their own hands. Because you can only ignore a nation for so long before the nation stops listening to you. Britain is no longer standing at a crossroads. It already took the wrong turn. The only question left is how deep the damage goes before someone decides to turn the wheel. The signs aren't subtle. They are not buried in reports or hidden in parliamentary jargon. They are on the streets. They are in the headlines. They are in the quiet resignation of people who no longer expect safety, justice, or truth from people in power. We're now living in a country where riots erupt in the name of justice, while actual justice has all but vanished. Where mobs can break police lines, burn property, and chant threats, and still walk free, because the police are too understaffed, under-resourced, or just outright ordered to stand down. How did we get here? Start with the prisons. Oh, what's left of them? Thanks to the SDS-40 scheme, tens of thousands of criminals have been released early, some after serving less than half of their sentence. Not because they reformed, not because their risk to society is gone, but because the system literally can't handle them anymore. It's overcrowded, underfunded, and cracked wide open. And who walks out the door? Burglars, gang members, violent offenders, even individuals linked to extremist ideologies. They are released back into a society already stretched thin. No meaningful supervision, no rehabilitation, just out. And the public? Left to hope they don't reoffend. Again, this isn't a guess. It's already happening. Reoffense rates are climbing. Violent incidents involving recently released offenders on the rise. And yet, instead of owning the failure, the government shrinks from it, retreats into silence, labels anyone asking questions as alarmist. But how do you not sound alarmed when criminals with a history of violence are walking through your neighborhood? The state used to protect its citizens. Now it's protecting its image. And the courts? No better. Sentencing is inconsistent at best, completely politicized at worst. Citizens feel like they are being held to a different standard than everyone else. British nationals caught defending themselves get the book thrown at them. Foreign nationals, even those with prior offenses, get reduced sentences, legal aid, and in many cases, immunity from deportation. Because here's the catch, deportation doesn't even mean what it used to. Illegal migrants, many of whom enter with no documentation, no identification, and sometimes with known criminal histories, are rarely deported. They file appeals, claim asylum, lean on human rights legislation, and the process drags on for years. In the meantime, they are placed into communities, funded by taxpayers, often with housing and stipends many citizens could only dream of. It's not xenophobic to talk about this. It's responsible, because while thousands of illegal arrivals continue pouring in, the infrastructure isn't growing with them. Schools are overcrowded. The NHS is overwhelmed. Local councils are buckling under the cost. And people, hard-working, tax-paying, law-abiding citizens, are watching their communities change, their services vanish, and their concerns ignored. It doesn't matter how many times the government calls it misinformation. It doesn't change what's happening. And when people feel unheard long enough, they stop talking. That's when protests start. That's when civil unrest becomes a form of communication. And when even that's dismissed, when the government frames it as fringe, extremist, or politically motivated, it only fuels a fire. Because the truth is, this anger isn't coming from extremists. It's coming from everyday people. People who've seen their town shift under their feet. People who watch local crime go from occasional to constant. People who are raising children in places where police won't even patrol after dark. And what are they told? Tolerance is strength. Multiculturalism is non-negotiable. Any questioning of policy is dangerous rhetoric. They are gaslit over and over, while the reality outside their door tells a completely different story. And the reality is this: Britain is in managed decline. Not accidental, not incidental. Managed. It's a political strategy, whether they admit it or not. Contain the chaos. Soften the language. Release the pressure valve just enough to avoid total collapse. But never address the root cause. Never reverse the policies. Never enforce the border. Never restore full sentencing. Never put citizens first. Instead, just talk. Distract. Reframe. Meanwhile, the cultural decay continues. British values, whatever that phrase even means anymore, are being diluted by the day. The pride that once came with national identity is now treated like a red flag. Everything is global now. Transnational. Inclusive. Borderless. But in a world where every culture is embraced except your own, people start to feel displaced in their own country. That's not bigotry. That's disillusionment. It's the feeling of being erased while being told to smile about it, of paying into a system that no longer recognizes you, of raising your voice and being told you're the problem. And while all of this plays out, the government continues to posture. International conferences, climate declarations, human rights statements. It's all performance, all noise, nothing that actually protect the people who built this country and keep it running. Because here's what they won't say: sovereignty does matter. Borders do matter. Culture is worth preserving. And public safety is not optional. It's a foundation of everything. But none of that can exist when policies are shaped around global approval instead of national interest. When international courts override British law. When border control is treated like a formality. When criminals are released early to make room for a system that was never built to handle this level of dysfunction. Britain is not functioning, and no amount of soft messaging is going to fix that. So the people, they're retreating too. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. They are checking out, disengaging. Because when you're punished for noticing the obvious, silence becomes self-preservation. But silence won't save the country. It never has. What will? Accountability. Action. A government that's willing to stop managing decline and start reversing it. That means ending schemes like SDS 40, restoring full sentencing, deporting illegal migrants with no right to be here, cutting off the endless legal appeals, refusing to bend to foreign courts, and most of all, listening to the public before they are forced to take to the streets again. Because if the leadership doesn't course correct now, the next eruption of unrest won't be a surprise. It'll be inevitable. And if you're watching this, nodding along because you've seen this unfold with your own eyes, you're not alone. You're not imagining it. You're not overreacting. You're living in a country where chaos has become policy, and you're right to speak up about it. So don't stop. Don't back down. There's a point in every decline where people stop asking for help and start preparing for the worst. That's where Britain is now. Not because the public gave up, but because the government did, one quiet policy at a time. One press conference after another, one crisis mismanaged into another headline, and another broken promise brushed under the rug. We've been conditioned to lower our expectations, to accept that crime is just part of life, that illegal immigration is too complicated to fix, that justice isn't supposed to be consistent, that borders are more symbolic than functional, and that if we even question it, we're somehow the problem. It's not just absurd, it's insulting. And no amount of spin from Downing Street is going to change the fact that the cracks are now visible in every corner of the country, from the city centers riddled with violent crime to the small town flooded with illegal entrants and stripped of services. From overstretched hospitals to courts that no longer deliver justice, every system is showing strain. Every institution is fraying at the seams. And people feel it. Deeply. They feel it when they see their streets becoming more dangerous, their schools more crowded, their energy bills rising, and their voices ignored. They feel it when their concerns are labeled far-right simply for wanting to live in a safe, functioning country. Because that's where we are now. Stability is controversial. Order is seen as oppressive. And citizenship, actual British citizenship, has been watered down to a set of responsibilities without any of the protections. It's backwards. Completely upside down. Let's go back to the heart of this crisis, the deliberate policy of early release for criminals under the SDS 40 scheme. This is not a bug in the system. It is a system. Over 40,000 criminals released after serving just 40% of their sentences, many of them dangerous, many of them linked to ideologies that directly threaten the public. And when those people reoffend, as many of them do, it's the public who pays. The victims. The families, the communities left picking up the pieces while the system shrugs and moves on. It's easy to say we're being soft on crime. But that doesn't go far enough. What's happening now is institutional surrender, a complete abdication of the state's duty to protect its citizens, not because it can't, but because it won't. The prisons are overcrowded because the borders are wide open. The courts are clogged because the laws are exploited. The police are overwhelmed because crime is rising and resources are going elsewhere. The hospitals are collapsing under pressure. And the government's answer is to keep pretending everything's under control. But the numbers don't lie. The violence isn't a coincidence. It's not isolated. It's systemic. Knife attacks, gang violence, extremist-related threats. They are rising, and the response is silence. Or worse, blame shifting. Anything to avoid admitting what everyone else already knows. Meanwhile, illegal immigration continues at historic levels. Thousands arriving each week, most by boat, many undocumented, and some already flagged as security threats. Yet they are released into the population anyway. No vetting, no accountability, no plan. It's not sustainable. It's not safe. And it's certainly not fair to the people who live in the communities being asked to absorb the consequences. Because that's what's happening. Consequences are being outsourced. The failures of the government are being downloaded onto the public. The middle class pays higher taxes while services shrink. The working class competes for jobs and housing with people who aren't even meant to be in the country. And those who speak out, marginalized, branded, dismissed. We've entered a stage where basic patriotism is suspicious and basic truth is offensive, where protecting your home, your family, your identity is treated like a political act rather than a fundamental right. This isn't governance. It's decay masquerading as policy, and it's not just affecting cities. Rural Britain, once considered stable and untouched, is feeling it too. Illegal migrants are being housed in hotels across the countryside. Local councils aren't consulted. Residents are told after the fact, and anyone who raises concerns is accused of intolerance. But it's not intolerance to ask why criminals are being placed in small towns. It's not intolerance to wonder how already limited police forces are supposed to keep up. And it's not intolerance to demand that the government do its job. At this point, that's all anyone's asking for. Do your job. Secure the borders. Enforce the law. Punish criminals. Protect citizens. Uphold sovereignty, respect identity, and stop pretending that managed decline is progress. Because if the state won't uphold its responsibilities, what's left? People are already tuning out, disengaging from the system, refusing to report crimes, avoiding the courts, trusting the government less with each passing day. And when public trust collapses, things get dangerous, not because of politics, but because of survival. You can't keep telling people everything is fine while their lived reality tells them otherwise. That's not public service. That's gaslighting. And it's driving a wedge so deep between the government and the people that there may be no way back. But here's the truth. The public hasn't failed the system. The system failed the public. It failed when it chose optics over order. It failed when it turned prisons into revolving doors. It failed when it prioritized illegal migrants over legal citizens. It failed when it allowed international courts to override national law. It failed when it punished loyalty and rewarded disruption. And now, it's failing to even admit any of it happened. Because if it did admit it, then it would have to change course. And the current leadership? They are too entrenched in their own narrative to make that kind of reversal. But reality doesn't care about political pride. Reality is catching up. Fast. And if the people at the top won't wake up, then the people at the bottom will be forced to act, through protest, through civil pushback, through alternative political movements that rise from the wreckage of the establishment's failure. That's not a threat. It's a consequence, one the government is blindly walking toward. So here we are, a country in open decline, run by people too scared to say the word crisis, while the people who live in it face the results every single day. Broken neighborhoods, rising crime, legal double standards, cultural erasure, government spin. It's a lot to take in. And if you've been watching all of this unfold, day by day, wondering if you're the only one who sees it, you're not. You're not imagining it. You're not overreacting. You're living in a country where the truth has become a radical act. And the question now isn't just what the government will do. It's what the people must do. Because waiting for things to magically improve, that's not a strategy. That's denial. And Britain is out of time for denial. So speak, loudly. Share what's happening where you live. Ask questions. Demand answers. Push back against the narrative that tells you this is normal. Leave a comment and tell us what's really going on where you are. Hit the like button if you're done with the lies. Share this with someone who's still waiting for things to settle down. And subscribe to the channel if you want the truth without the government gloss. Because if no one else will say it, we will.